hard to endure the slings and arrows that are fired at you from the people that you love and are trying to serve.
Yeah.
You know, so many times Christians in these creative industries, they'll hear from people at church, you know, how can you call yourself a Christian and write stories about someone who rides dragons?
Yeah.
Right. And then on the flip side, they're at a secular con sitting on a panel and they say, and they hear Christians have no business writing science fiction.
Yeah.
You're science deniers.
From the Florida Parent Educators Association, home of the largest homeschool convention in America, this is the Not by the Book podcast. I'm your host, FPEA Chairman Suzanne Nunn, and together we will hear from guests who share their journey to who and where they are today. Each one of them at some point left the expected path, ripped the page out of the book that says you have to do it like this, and made their own way. I hope these conversations inspire you as much as they do me. Today I get to chat with Scott Miner, COO of Realm Makers. Scott and I dive into storytelling and how it impacts our lives from the time we are small children and even the ways that we choose to engage in story as adults. We talk about the beauty and challenges of fantasy as a genre and the ways that it has expanded in the realm of Christian fiction. We also talk about the other creative venues where Christians meet pop culture in a powerful way. You'll be inspired to embrace your own creativity and your role in your own story as you listen to Scott share. Let's listen.
I remember having a very solid and happy childhood until about age 7. And as I look back in hindsight, really the thing that made it possible for me to emerge from what happened after that age was really the library that I had in my room.
Oh, wow.
When I was young, and the reading that I did very young, and the habit that instilled in me. It kind of went away eventually as like there was a period of multiple divorces and domestic abuse and such that I went through from pretty much age 7 through 8th grade. For that period of time, I went to about 12 different schools in 8 years.
That's wild.
Yeah, it was
a lot of
pretty
change.
wild. Yeah. And so there was a lot of instability, to put it mildly, in my life. But what I always gravitated back towards was reading. Even though there's a period of time where I didn't have my library anymore. The library in my room of all the Berenstain Bears and everything. You know, I had a lot of these little thin early readers that one time I was home sick. And I guess there's another piece to that story because I actually acted sick.
Oh, yeah.
to stay home and then actually became sick. And that scared the daylights out of me. So I never did that again.
Don't do that again.
I was like, oh no, I made myself sick. That's terrible.
So what part of the country were you living in? Where did you grow up?
Yes, that was California. I grew up in California, the San Francisco Bay Area. So
siblings, were you an only child or?
No, I had an older brother from the original marriage.
Okay.
And after the divorces and remarriages and everything, I had step siblings, and then I had ex-step siblings, but then I had a half sibling from that marriage. So I had you're no longer at all related to me, but there's still sort of a half sibling kind of connecting me to you.
Yeah.
And what I ended up growing into was a lack of connection with even my parents or my actual sibling. Like I just eventually went off to college and just went off on my own to the University of Southern California in Los Angeles.
It's interesting that you say that because I feel like, with young children, a lot of the time, reading becomes something for them that's very therapeutic and almost cathartic, right? When you just dive into books and the worlds that they open up to you. And so it sounds like you did some of that yourself as a child. How did that impact how you saw the world around you? The books that you read and the stories that you dove into in those early years, how did it impact how you saw things around you?
Well, I was very naive as a young child, and even, growing into an adult. It's like now I'm in my 50s and I'm like, how did I go through so much of my life being so naive, having sort of an idealistic picture of the world, thinking other people thought like I did, and that you should do things that are right, and you should believe things that are true, and you
Right.
should not do things that are mean, and really not understanding the mindset of others. I think reading fiction only perhaps just allowed me to stay in the world that I enjoyed. And I didn't read much nonfiction until much later in life.
Mm-hmm.
So now, of course, I've taken the red pill and understand much more, including the fact that much of my life was impacted by an unknown dimension of autism.
Mm.
Like, I did not know, like, for the first 50 years of my life, that was a thing, that was actually a word that impacted my life in ways that I had no idea. My wife was late diagnosed with autism. And I'm like, well, if you are, then I am. Plus, having my oldest son, people would say, you really ought to have him looked at. I'm not supposed to say things like that, but you might want to have him checked. And I'm like, if he's autistic, that means I am. So there's a degree of fixation. There's a degree of, well, I can't actually explain it because I don't understand it entirely myself, but I can see it in hindsight, right?
Yeah.
And when it came to that library when I was a child, I started reading very larger books when I was in second grade, third grade. I was reading easily by the time I was in kindergarten. And I had The Rescuers, the Mouse and His Motorcycle. Oh, the one with the pig, Crunchy.
Yes.
Oh my goodness. Charlotte's Web.
Charlotte's Web, yes.
And then the last one was The Hobbit. So I was just reading those on repeat. And I remember one day distinctly perseverating on the cover of The Hobbit, and it said, Prelude to The Lord of the Rings. So I thought about that for a moment, and I shouted out my bedroom door to Mom, what's a prelude? And realize it's something that comes before something else. So then off I go to my third grade elementary librarian, and I ask for The Lord of the Rings. And she's sort of, oh, really? You want The Lord of the Rings, huh?
That's awesome.
So she handed me Terry Brooks and The Sword of Shannara. And so I started reading that and eventually put it down and went back and got The Fellowship of the Ring. So I really enjoyed reading through all that as, that was probably ages grades 4 through 6. I read The Lord of the Rings. And that ended up being formative just in the things that Becky and I had in common when we met.
Yeah.
In college. But I had moved all over the country. You asked where I lived. It was in California, went to Southern California, moved out to Boston on my own, and lived for a short period of time in Nevada and Arizona, Connecticut. Now we're in the Philadelphia area of Pennsylvania.
Well, I think, it's interesting going back to a comment you made a little bit earlier. You said while you had your library, did something happen where you lost your library that was around you?
Yeah, it was all the moving. It was having the abusive stepfather where you're pretty much escaping. You're just like leaving everything.
Right.
And escaping. And that was a recurring theme in my young life, to where you're just like, you're told, grab a few things, we're leaving.
And go.
And then just go.
How did you make that work for you then with reading and wanting to have those books? Without a library, did you still pursue that interest in your life a lot, or did you find something else to
Well, for a
pour
large period
into?
of time, I didn't have those books again. I excelled in school. That was where I found my sense of just confidence. And I was, because of my reading as a young person,
Right.
I guess I found school very easy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, and that was much to my benefit. And through the course of my life, I have realized how beneficial that was to my life and to other people that I've spoken with as they've shared their stories.
Right.
But I pretty much just balled myself up into an egg and waited for the storms to pass, and eventually started to crawl out of now, as I say that, it's you wouldn't think that seeing me, because I was so extroverted.
Yeah.
I was getting into drama, musicals, and music, and I was very much like, hi, like trying to meet people. But I was also emotionally just in a little holding pattern,
Yeah.
trying to stay safe.
Well, talk to me a little bit more about your interest in drama and theater and kind of how that played out in those years of your life. This would have been like in high school, right?
Right,
Yeah.
right. It was somewhere that, growing up, people are taking you to sporting events. Like everything my parents took me to or had me participate in wasn't really feeding me. I wasn't going to be martial arts. I wasn't going to be playing baseball or football. That just wasn't what I was built to either be good at or enjoy. I wasn't good at any of those things, but it
Right.
was all the things that I was being introduced to as a child. So it wasn't until I changed schools in the middle of the year and the only elective that was possible was music. And I didn't know anything about playing an instrument, but I loved it and quickly progressed into the band. And it saved my sense of confidence. It helped me to create a sense of self, of who I was, apart from all the trauma that was going on. And there's a wonderful experience of being able to be on stage, have the guts to step out on stage and to do what you're asked to do and to excel and to get that recognition as a young child that really, really, really impacted me tremendously, to the point where someone who's in my position would hyperfixate on that
Yeah.
thing, because it is healing. I went to college for musical theater, ultimately.
Okay. Ultimately, that's what you chose, right?
Yeah. Well, initially, I was a jazz saxophone major, but I'm not a jazz musician. I'm not that person, right?
Yeah.
And then I went to theater, but there was no music. And so I was really kind of struggling to find my place at the first college I went to. But I was out for 2 years, a bit more of a story there, but went back to college and ultimately graduated with a degree in musical theater from the University of the Arts in Philadelphia. And that was something that was feeding my talent. But again, I was in a place where like, I'm not these people,
Interesting.
right? It's like, I don't want to spend my life surrounded by needing to make everything all about myself, right? I wanted to have a family, right? And that wasn't something that was shared by most any of the people that I was spending time with in college. So I always had a hard time finding anyone else who was at all like me, who had my desires, loved Jesus. I was very young in my Christianity. I just didn't start going to church until I was in high school, but didn't have a chance to mature in that before going to college. But the Lord kept me safe in some very confusing times there in the 90s.
Sure. Yeah.
But the performing on stage and the fact that I was a good singer and I could dance and I was a pretty good actor.
Mm-hmm.
You don't have to be great at any one of those things to be a very good musical theater performer.
Exactly.
And it was something that, I don't know, the words that occurred to me are that it saved me
Mm-hmm.
in the sense of not descending into just having no personhood of my own.
Right.
It really gave me something that I knew was mine. I didn't get it from my parents. I didn't get it from someone else. I got it from the Lord, I know now. But it was not the destination. It was the road to some degree of recovery for myself.
Yeah. When you were going to college for musical theater, what were your plans after? And I don't know the story of the time you said you were out. There's a story there, but what were your plans for musical theater outside of the degree, and what were you thinking you would do with that?
Yeah, I had no plans as I was approaching it. It was
Yeah.
just the thing I did. That was the thing I did.
Yeah.
So that's what I was going to go to college for. Now, before I got to the point of graduating, I realized I don't want to do this.
Mm-hmm.
This isn't what I want to do, but it's the nearest bachelor's. So I'm
Right.
like, all right, this is the nearest bachelor's. I'm going to be the first person in my immediate family to graduate from college. I was the only one of my siblings to graduate high school.
That's crazy. But it is something that you kind of get fixated on. Like, I was the only female in my household to have graduated from college. And I remember feeling that very strongly, thinking it's something I want to finish. I want to get it done because I want to be that person,
Right. This was the nearest bachelor's. So I'm just going to go get it.
Yep.
And have a degree in musical theater and then do my life really without a plan
Yeah.
at that point. But I met Becky.
I was going to say, you said you met your wife in college, right?
Yeah, she was pursuing a degree in film animation.
Oh, interesting.
But she loves musical theater.
Mm-hmm.
She loved Lord of the Rings. Like me, we were both drum majors of our respective high school marching bands.
Oh, that's so funny. I was too.
Yeah,
I know.
great.
That's a great experience, isn't it?
So, and then I saw a poster on her wall that I was looking at. I'm like, that's a Christian poster. Are you a Christian too? So we after we'd started kind of dating, I came to that realization, and she was. So we had all these commonalities in art school. Like, that's just not common,
Right?
In art school. And that was the beginning of something beautiful.
That's crazy. So you met there in Philadelphia, right? Finished school, and were you all finishing about the same time?
She needed a bit more time to finish. Like, she finished a semester after I did. So I thought, okay, I'll just go get a job touring. I ended up performing with the Missoula Children's Theater on a year tour. I stopped after about 8 months because Becky got a job in Connecticut. There's a bit more to the story, but my father got ill, and so there's a few reasons why I left the tour, but ultimately went to Connecticut and joined her where she had gotten a job. Because I do theater, I could be anywhere.
You can be anywhere,
but at the same time, I was like, Connecticut? I thought you were going to go to, Orlando. You're an animator. Orlando, Toronto, LA. Okay, whatever. Here we are in Connecticut.
Interesting.
And we got married fairly soon after being there. And so very young, two nerdy, unbeknownst to ourselves, autistic couple had a hard time making friends because we were so unusual. And
that's so funny.
Living life together. And it was wonderful, but very difficult. I had a hard time finding my place in this world. I started teaching Shakespeare performance to children, to homeschoolers. That was my first introduction to homeschoolers, was a mom in our church because I was inquiring with our pastor about teaching drama lessons.
Okay.
Christian drama lessons specifically. And he said, you should talk to Ann Metzger. And she said, well, I'm going to have a baby on Tuesday. So let's meet on Wednesday. We'll have everyone over to my house and we'll talk about this. And I hadn't had children yet, but I was still scratching my head. Wait, you're going to have a baby on Tuesday? And so you're going to have everybody over to your house on Wednesday? Well, it turns out it was like her 7th child. And she's like, I got this.
That's awesome.
I got this down.
I'll be ready the next day. Yeah.
And so everyone was very much, they said there's nothing available for Christian families in the world of drama. You could go to the children's theater, but they're doing cabaret.
Yeah.
With the children, right? So I started doing Christian drama workshops in Connecticut, and I was talking with a group of homeschoolers in Southern Connecticut. There was a group of homeschoolers doing Shakespeare things. It was like 5 families, and it was a closed circuit. We're the only ones doing it. We're going to hire a director. And so it created this latent desire among the entire homeschool community that, well, we want to do Shakespeare programs too, but they won't let us in. They could just buy a ticket and go watch. So I was asked if I would help a group do a Renaissance fair. They wanted to do a Renaissance dinner, and would I help them do that? And by the end of the phone call, she went back and talked to everybody, and now they all wanted to do a Shakespeare play instead. So that's how I got into teaching Shakespeare performance to homeschoolers.
Right.
And I loved it. It is the joy of my life to do Shakespeare with young people, ages like 7 and up.
That's fantastic. Yeah.
It was really amazing, and not really changing the words or anything. That was what introduced me and my wife to the world of homeschooling. I'd never heard of it before.
Right.
And here I am, newly married, without children of my own, teaching homeschoolers.
That gets you ready for something.
Exactly.
It does.
And so I did that for years and years and years. I have my own editions of Shakespeare's plays. And that was something that gave me the opportunity to pass on to other young people the really excellent things you can get from being on stage.
Right.
I get to put aluminum swords in their hands and little, we're doing Julius Caesar. So we have blood packets under the togas made with liquid Tide and red food coloring.
That's awesome.
With a little chocolate syrup to make it not so brightly colored. And having a little 4th grade Julius Caesar, bursting the blood packets underneath his toga and like, oh my goodness, it's like we're assassinating Julius Caesar, Oh,
wow.
And it gives you this cathartic opportunities to experience something that is that incredible a thing to experience. Like, you're not actually assassinating Julius Caesar. You got the Lord of the Rings soundtrack playing. Everything is choreographed in slow motion. You've got, swords and daggers that are not as sharp as a spoon.
Right.
But you're experiencing it nonetheless. Right. And you get to then wash your hands and hear the applause and go home and like, oh my goodness, this young child who was always so quiet. How did you get him to do that on stage? It's always the quiet, introverted children who all of a sudden are able to come out of their shells.
Yep. Yeah.
And rescue the princess.
That's so
right.
true.
Or sing the solo. And such a joy in my life. And so storytelling has been a part of my life forever.
Yeah, I was going to ask. So storytelling from an early age was a part of your life, and it came out in those different ways. It's funny to me how people who love story find their way to all of the options. Music tells story, theater tells story. It's like you love those things. And it's not unusual to see someone who is multi-talented in those arenas, really, who are storytellers, who find so many outlets. They will, even to the degree that they want to help others tell a story. I mean, to that point, because when you understand the importance of story in our lives, or that we are living a story every single day of our life. I think, some people never connect that, right? But we are living in our own story. We're living in a bigger story than our own, and we're a part of everyone else's story. And when you understand those things and you see it, and you get to be a part of creating stories, I don't know, just there's something that happens when you connect all of those pieces and parts. And it's like thrilling. It's like, when you see a story played out on stage, it's just like it does something for you. So knowing that story has been a part of your life in many different ways, throughout your life, I'm curious where you started to realize that you were going to be creating, even more around the world of story and storytelling than even just theater. When did you start creating your library again? How did that start happening for you?
Well, really, it didn't start until after, with regard to everything we do with Realm Makers, Becky became an author from being a film animation major and then getting married, having children 12 years later. The way her creativity resumed was in writing stories.
Was that something that she had thought would be a part of her life? Was that something that she gravitated to younger? Or was it something that just, evolved as she was older?
Well, she loved reading stories. And as an animator, she was still a storyteller, just with a blue pencil on a light table.
Right.
Right. So she was telling stories with the pictures. She is a very talented visual artist. And so it was a very easy transition for her when she was young. She wanted to be an animator.
Yeah.
And so she was telling stories, but she could just draw them. And so quickly, that storytelling impulse was the same for her. Together, when we met, one of the things we did was we played role-playing games. And it's the story world that she created, playing Dungeons and Dragons, to have her own homebrewed campaign setting that we played within, that ultimately she writes her stories in that story world, which is very much grounded in like the Tolkien-esque world that we enjoyed so much. Just creating our own stories.
That's right.
Yeah. And it was so dynamic, creating our own stories together around a table, and that it's a very creative outlet for people who maybe don't get involved in sports and things like that. But that was really where story came back into my life, not so much in the reading, but in playing role-playing games. Back in college with her. But then once we graduated, again, we stopped doing that because it's really hard to get everybody together. And it was just a matter of working and working and working and working at jobs and working two jobs. And I kind of went into almost like 20 years of just doing, trying to make it possible for Becky to be home with the kids. We have 3 boys. And I, in hindsight, discovered that I wasn't growing. I wasn't learning. I was just doing and trying to do more without a very strong foundation upon which to build. A degree in musical theater. I was really kind of flailing as a kid. But then Becky just had this idea one day. It's like, as she's talking with other Christian authors who are writing in the genres of fantasy and science fiction, that there's really no place for them to find each other or find their readers. And so she created this conference that has brought the Realm Makers bookstore to FPEA for ever since 2019, I think was the first time
That sounds about right. Yeah.
we were there. Yeah. And so just sharing stories with others has become our job now. And as the author's husband, I got more and more and more involved in the practical aspects of it.
Right.
Researching venues and negotiating hotel contracts. And, Becky would have a wonderful idea like, I wonder how much it costs to have a kiosk at the mall.
Yeah.
And for us, the mall is the third largest mall in the United States, the King of Prussia Mall. And so we did a pop-up bookstore there in 2019. And now we have a physical bookstore there. So book sales, selling books, and serving authors who are Christian authors writing in these weird genres has been unexpected.
Yeah.
But the community is what demanded it. There was an unknown number of people in the community, but turned out there are thousands. We've got, over 3,000 people in our private social network now. And it's kind of discovering like, well, this is really, we're making an impact. We're actually doing something that other people need. Let's do more of this. So
talk to me.
Where we are now just feels like it is arisen out of being willing to say yes to something that was happening that actually.
Talk to me a little bit about the world of fantasy and Christian authors, because I know that it's a unique, especially, say 20 years ago, right? That was kind of a unique genre, like you said, a weird genre for Christian authors to find themselves writing in and to, find the people who were willing to buy in to some of those stories. Talk to me a little bit about how that has been for you all to navigate.
Sure. Well, it's really interesting to see that Christians invented the genre, right? From George MacDonald to C.S. Lewis and J.R.R. Tolkien. It's a very powerful genre of story. You can tell something that is very much true within the context of a fictional world that the reader can relate to. They can relate with this character in this amazingly creative world, and the author can introduce concepts that are quite biblical, quite true. And the reader receives them without being distracted by what to them might be, if they have some sort of negative association with religion or Christianity or church. It could offer that piece of truth without the stained glass
institution
interrupting their ability to see it for what it is. Right? When people and C.S. Lewis spoke specifically about that. As a reader, you're just following Aslan and how powerful he is. And you're just screaming at the book, like, why are you walking right up to the White Witch, to the stone table, and letting them, cut your hair and stab you? Why are you letting them do that? And then to see him sacrifice himself, and you feel that pain, and you feel that loss, and you feel the sorrow of the other characters as they're watching. And ultimately, you're able to make that connection. That's what Jesus did. And you felt the feelings, right? That where in other, when you're at church, people tell you how you're supposed to feel. At least that's how you feel as a child. Like, Jesus died for your sins. And so you need to feel, thankful for that. And in the telling someone how to feel can then in the same time freeze those feelings. It's like, I'm not feeling it. I've been seeing this my whole life. It's so normal to me. It's almost casual. It's like growing up in the church. It's like your living room, and it doesn't seem so unusual. It doesn't strike you how it should until you have all the familiarity stripped away and can experience that emotion anew. And that's what many Christian authors have experienced or feel or want to convey in their fiction.
Mm-hmm.
And from a more simplistic standpoint, they just grew up with the blockbusters of Jaws and Star Wars and Star Trek and all these things that were fun that the parents were watching and the kids were watching and were really impacted by in terms of developing their imaginations. And so as they got older, they start enjoying these genres and writing in these genres. Our community is much younger than other Christian writing communities.
Mm-hmm.
We're about 30% Gen X, 30% millennial, and 30% Gen Z.
Yeah.
We did a poll recently, and that's really encouraging.
Yeah, it is.
You know, so a lot of it is just a matter of like what was in pop culture at the time.
Mm-hmm.
You know, but then there's also a pulling away from pop culture that the church engaged in that really just left it to everyone else. You know, as an adult, I'm like, well, no wonder it kind of was such a negative thing. Movies that were being made in pop culture, it's like, well, if we're going to pull away from it, if Christians aren't going to participate in it, well, we're just leaving it to everyone else. And so there's a large interest in Christians to engage with popular culture, to tell excellent stories. And there's so much that's going on in the industry right now that's so dynamic. Yeah. I mean, we had Disney animators, you know, Mike Naraki has joined us for the last number of years at FPEA. And it's homeschoolers that we find most closely connected to stories and reading voraciously and educating themselves. So that's where story and homeschool conferences kind of come together, because all of our authors were like, I can't find my audience.
Yeah.
I can't find a publisher. I don't want to shoehorn, you know, anyone's dogma into my story. I just want to write a good story. And from going to homeschool conventions, that's where we met originally, Brian Davis. He was my oldest son's first favorite author, right? So when everybody was talking about not being able to find their audience, I just kind of said, I think I know where these readers are. Let's go to a homeschool convention and see what that is all about.
Yeah.
And that all started in 2018. And it's grown since then. And it's really, for me, I do it out of service to the authors and the community that I serve, as well as now to the community of readers who I serve. I'm kind of in the middle
of it all.
In the wood between the worlds, so to speak, as C.S. Lewis had put it, helping authors, Christian authors, find Christian readers, both of whom just want to read something that's really awesome and is not, well, that is coherent in terms of a biblical worldview, even if it's entirely, you know, made up and fun.
Yeah, yeah. Well, that was one of the things for me, and, you know, going back to when we first met, and, you know, my goal was, because I had a voracious reader that was my child, I couldn't stay ahead of what he was reading to always make sure it was good, clean. And, you know, so I was coming to homeschool conventions looking for authors. And then I kind of made it a point for me, when I was able to serve in a capacity that allowed me to do it, to try to connect families with authors who were writing, you know, a variety of genres, but who were writing in such a way that it was a place to find people who had solid, you know, backgrounds themselves as people who were writing, you know, so that it wasn't so scary or intimidating to open your kid up to what they were putting out there.
Right. But, I remember distinctly watching a movie called The Emerald Forest. And within the context of that story, there was a young boy who had to go through, you know, with this native Amazonian tribe, these rites of passage. And I remember just watching that movie over and over again. And in hindsight, I realized, like, I was wanting to go through something like that, to where when you come out to the other end, there are people who are waiting there to say, now you're a man, right?
Yeah.
Come through that hardship and to endure the pain and to accomplish the goal and remain alive on the other side of it and know that you can do it again.
Yeah.
Right. And so there's so few opportunities that young people have to have that kind of experience. We're so comfortable that reading and drama are ways that we can manufacture those opportunities.
Yeah.
Right. Because it is very much a rite of passage, a tremendous accomplishment for a child to dig into content in a musical and memorize the songs and the dancing or if even just in a play, Shakespeare, to memorize something and particularly Shakespeare, that people think you can't do it. Oh, you can't do Shakespeare with children, that's like rocket science, right?
Yeah.
It's really not. But
it works.
It's an amazing opportunity. And that's what keeps drawing me back to that. And that's where reading is the only way to get through it. Either that or you have to manufacture, the child can then manufacture their own trauma in order to experience it, because they feel like they're living life and just floating through. And either what I just said or the small things that they encounter, they make a mountain out of a molehill.
Yeah.
In order to have that enemy, in order to have that struggle, right? It's like, why are you doing this? You've got no problems. It's like, but it's almost like we have to have problems. Like I need to have a problem. I need to have something to conquer.
Yeah. And you talk about rites of passage, and this is like a little diversion here, but if you read very much about the rite of passage and the American culture, right, you'll see that there's a lot lacking for children in our society and who do grow up, because in so many other cultures and so many societies, there is a mark that you reach that says, now I'm a man. There's a place that you reach that says, yes, I'm a man now, and I've read a little bit about it, and it's intriguing because it's like you said, there's this intrinsic need to have the battle to overcome, right? To have the thing that we achieve, the thing that we attack and we win, that's important, because I think we are intrinsically designed to need that and to pursue that in some way, So if we don't have those healthy markers, it's like you said, people make a mountain out of a molehill, and we see that happening a lot. But I want to go back for a minute to the things that you're doing with Realm Makers. So you created Realm Makers as a place for authors to kind of come together to begin with, and you had a pop-up store, you now have a store, but your conferences, let's talk about those for just a minute too, because that now goes beyond the authors who were already writing and needed a place to come together, right? You're pouring into younger writers now. So will you tell me a little bit about that so that our audience can hear a little bit about what you're doing with Realm Makers?
Sure. So you might be able to imagine the Christian authors who are writing fantasy and science fiction going to a typical Christian writers conference where people could be writing anything. But to a large degree, they're writing nonfiction or memoirs or historical fiction. And it was difficult for authors of fantasy and science fiction to find their community.
Right.
Nerds, geeks,
Yep.
But they would find each other by their Captain America t-shirts, and they'd be sitting at the table together bemoaning the fact that the marketing session is really not valid to serve them, because they're not writing their novels in order to speak at the women's breakfast and sell their book in the narthex.
Yes.
That's not, they're not pursuing a speaking career by writing what they're writing. They're just writing what is the creative ideas that have been put on their heart.
Right.
And after a number of years, Becky just decided, we need our own conference. There was a lot of frustration had built up in the community of Christian authors of fantasy and science fiction. And I wasn't really involved. I was just listening. And, the spouse who anyone who's creative and is having ideas like this is going to go to and say, I want to do this. You're talking about it together.
Yeah.
And I was just helping with a bookstore because she wanted to have a consignment bookstore at this conference.
Yeah.
And so I and my oldest son at the time helped. And it was really an amazing experience. And everybody said, "When's the next one?" And she was like, "I didn't know there was going to be another one." But we have done it every year since 2013, our 14th annual conference, which has grown and grown and grown and grown and grown to where we're one of the largest Christian homeschool conferences now, and also a convention in the country, by specifically focusing on this really tight niche of Christians writing in fantasy and science fiction. So since then, what I've discovered is that Christians in every creative outlet, in every creative industry, felt the same way. Christians in the animation industry also felt like they just kind of need to keep their head down and just work and do what they're asked to do.
Right.
Despite what it is that they're asked to do. Christians in the video game industry, Christians in the film and television industries, graphic novels, comic books. There are Christians in every creative industry and are dominating in every creative industry, but somehow feel like they are not entirely welcome or able to be open about their faith when they're at work.
Right.
And then when they're at church, I know someone very distinctly who, if they would talk to somebody at church and say, "Well, I make video games," right? And in one case, they're actually talking with, Christian investors. And they're like, "My 22-year-old is addicted to video games. You're the problem." Right?
Yeah.
Whether it's comic books or video games or film or anything like that. There was very much a knee-jerk reaction to Christians in these pop culture industries trying to create stories. And it's tremendously frustrating, at times hurtful, certainly lonely. It's a lonely place to be. And so Realm Makers has evolved over the past couple of years, where last year we had Disney animators, graphic novel creators, board game creators, video game developers, audio drama producers.
Right.
Every form of art where Christians are engaged in popular culture. Realm Makers endeavors to serve them and introduce them to their audience. Whether the audience is Christian or not, they want, perhaps they might use the word wholesome, or family friendly, or possibly distinctly Christian, excellently made art in whatever form that they enjoy. And that's what Realm Makers endeavors to cultivate, while still focusing on the Christian author, the storyteller. With the Writers' Conference, we've evolved into an expo that invites the audience to come and celebrate with these creators and love on them and find their new favorite author. Because most people who enjoy fantasy or science fiction or film, whatever, there's no Christian place that they are necessarily aware of to go to find it, unless they come to a place like Realm Makers, or it becomes so large, like Angel Studios and The Chosen at the time. Now Chosen has moved on from Angel Studios, but Angel Studios is doing many other projects that people are going to the theater and seeing, instead of just having to buy the video, right? And there are other filmmakers who are Christian who are making excellent film. The makers of Light of the World that came out last year were at Realm Makers, and they're developing a video game. S.D. Smith, who is an author who many of your audience would know, was one of the keynote speakers at Realm Makers last year. And he launched a video game. based on the world of the Green Ember. And it is important to be able to engage with our children and the genres that they're interested in, and to give them wholesome, excellent, fantastic stories.
Yeah.
And not leave them to the secular world to create those things because we feel afraid of entering that.
Yeah. And it's been interesting to see how it has evolved that way. And like you said, there's been a lot to overcome. I know even, bringing to homeschool conventions, in years past, some of these options for families was, for some people actually kind of scary, or what do we do with that? So it's been interesting to see the evolution.
For some people, it's just as scary to see drums on the stage.
Exactly.
In worship.
Exactly.
It's like pick your
whatever,
thing that you're going to be afraid of or think that is the beginning of the end.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's been interesting to see how Realm Makers has grown and evolved, and the authors that have come and been a part of that. And I'm so really happy that we can, find ways to make it work for families to find these authors and to find the stories that, make their kids wake up and want to be the next authors and creators, and to see that there's a place that they can do that and that they can be involved in these things where if it is from a non-secular or more wholesome perspective, that there's an audience for it and you can create it and you can be encouraged in doing so because other people have been successful at that, and
right.
Well, I am really glad we've had an opportunity to talk through this today. I know we've got a few minutes left here. What is your most exciting project? What are you looking forward to right now that you're working on that's like, this is new, this is what we're creating next, or just this is the exciting next step to what we're working with?
Yeah, well, what's amazing about what we do is every year we kind of remake it, so it's always new.
Yeah, it's always new.
Even though we've done the same conference for 14 years.
Yeah.
This year it's going to be in St. Louis at a renovated train station, like the Union Station.
Very cool.
Hotel in St. Louis. So this is like in 1894, the largest train station in the country.
Yeah.
And that's where Realm Makers is going to be happening.
And when does that happen?
Sort of a gas lamp fantasy.
Yeah.
So that is terribly exciting. Just doing it I feel like it is sort of like the final picture of what Realm Makers has been growing into. That is what is most exciting to me, and we'll be able to perhaps, instead of traveling from city to city, trying to find that place, I'm pretty confident that this is something that we can grow in and not grow out of again.
Yeah.
Because we've kept growing out of our venues.
Yeah.
And so that makes it difficult to manage the following year. So that is exciting. Well, at FPEA again this year, we're going to have Mike Naraki joining us again and premiering the first 2 episodes of the second season of the Dead Sea Squirrels.
That's exciting.
And he shares an office with Steve Taylor teaching at Lipscomb University. And Steve Taylor is now going to be a keynote speaker at Realm Makers. So if you know the music of Steve Taylor from the 80s, kind of alternative rock, Christian satire, he's amazing. But
that's great.
A lot of like what I read about his story is similar to a lot of the authors that we serve. He was growing up in the 80s, 70s and 80s and hearing Christian music and was like, I'm not impressed. He liked The Clash. And these are his words in a little biographical thing. And he kind of liked their slap you in the face lyrics, right? But there was no hope. And from that point, he kind of found his niche.
Yeah.
Where, sort of like The Clash, but with hope.
With hope.
Right? So he would, want to sing, tell stories or sing songs that might take someone who needs to understand something and slap them in the face with it, but then give them hope, He definitely did that with his music.
That's great.
So we're looking forward to having him.
When is Realm Makers?
And Kathy Tyers is another one of our keynote speakers. She's written books in the Star Wars expanded universe.
Okay.
So she's a Star Wars author, but she has her own distinctly Christian series that she started writing. Her science fiction novel, Firebird, was the very first science fiction novel ever published by a Christian publisher.
Interesting. Yeah.
Yeah. So it kind of all comes full circle.
And when is the conference?
The Realm Makers Conference and Expo is happening the weekend between Father's Day and 4th of July, June 24th through the 27th in St. Louis.
Yeah.
And you'll find everything at realmmakers.com. There isn't yet registration open for fans to just come in, but honestly, we're going to let fans come in and shop at the expo for free.
That'll be
so
fun.
There's really no ticket you need to buy to walk into the expo and meet, hundreds of authors and Christian creators, storytellers wanting to introduce you to what they're doing. And but the Writers' Conference actually launches registration February 1st. So that's
it's coming right
on
up.
the edge of what's happening right now. And the Realm Awards, which is how we determine of the authors we know who's writing the best novels, all those submissions just wrapped up on the 21st of January. And so we're very much in the thick of
it right now.
Assigning books to judges to read. And then at the Writers' Conference that Thursday, we have a big awards gala that fans can also buy into to attend.
Fantastic.
So it's a really exciting time for Realm Makers, and particularly because of all that I see happening throughout all these different industries, whether it's video games or films. I mean, Adventures in Odyssey is making a movie, an animated film, which up to this point, they've remained strictly audio drama.
Right, just the audio dramas.
So there's just so much exciting happening in the industry, and Christians are participating in such excellent levels, and particularly animation. I'm really interested to see how things progress and how Realm Makers can help drive this creative spark in young people and old alike to tell amazing stories that have redemptive themes and really fly in the face of everything that the secular world is trying to tell you is true about the world.
Yeah.
When it's not. We have to battle the lies with truth. And it's really interesting that you can battle lies with truth by telling fiction, by writing fiction.
Right.
By drawing pictures, and then seeing them move on film. It's like we're telling the story of David, we're telling the story of Jesus, but like with The Chosen and the recent David movie, you have to add words to tell the story.
There's that different vehicle for it,
Right, but that's where even these current creative projects run up against a wall. It's the same wall that our authors run up against when they're writing fantasy or science fiction. It's like you had Jesus tell a joke at the wedding. Well, I mean, they're trying to tell a complete story and to give these disciples and everyone a personal story that is plausible for the world where they are. And so they can tell this story through the medium of film. And everyone's doing the best that they can. And it's really, sometimes it's hard to endure the slings and arrows that are fired at you from the people that you love, you're trying to serve. So many times, Christians in these creative industries, they'll hear from people at church, how can you call yourself a Christian and write stories about someone who rides dragons? Right? And then on the flip side, they're at a secular con sitting on a panel, and they hear Christians have no business writing science fiction. You're science deniers.
They have
and it's like
have it coming from both directions.
It kind of from both directions, and they're really just trying to be creative. Like God is a creative God.
Yeah.
And he's instilled in us the desire to create. And when we invite God into our creative process, that is an imperative in order for these Christian creators to not get off track. It's not that every Christian who creates any old thing is creating something that's absolutely perfect and biblical.
Yeah.
It's like the more time we spend together, what Realm Makers wants to do is bring the creators and the audience together. And if we all become more like Christ, we'll all become closer to who we're supposed to be.
Mm.
And that doesn't happen when we're submerged in the world.
Yeah.
By ourselves.
Very true.
Trying to stay afloat.
Well, let me ask you this before we wrap up. I love to also just kind of hear things that have been encouraging to my guests over the years, whether it's a thought or a quote or, your favorite character said this. Is there something that resonates with you that has encouraged you, or something that you would say to creators out there who may be trying to find their right place? Any encouraging words?
Sure. There's one that I've had in my head for a long time that I've quoted for many years.
Mm-hmm.
And it's actually a quote by Oscar Wilde. And it is, when critics disagree, the artist is in accord with themselves. Right? You're not pandering to one audience or another.
Yeah.
Right? If people who are smart disagree about your work, then it's a hint that you are remaining true to what it is you're supposed to be doing. And as a Christian author, you want that to be in accord with what God has driven you to do.
Right.
And if I may, there's another quote that more recently has really impacted me. And we do a winter retreat as well. And Alan Arnold, who has been in Christian fiction, an editor, started the Christian fiction line at Thomas Nelson a long time ago. He shared with our writers retreat a little sticker, and it says, "Who would you be if the world didn't tell you who you are?" And I would just think about myself. It's like, how much of who I am is who I've been told that I am by the world?
Right.
Right? And to be able to shake the Etch-a-Sketch and go, like, who does God say that I am? And what has he instilled in me? And how can I become more myself as God intended me to be, as opposed to the world said you are? Right? And it turns out that quote it's drawn from Carl Jung, who more accurately quoted as saying, "The world will ask you who you are. And if you don't know, the world will tell you."
That's so true.
Right? So that's been really impactful in my life for the past few years. Just to be able to go like, okay, I thought I knew who I was, but who I am is creating problems in relationships, right? And so you need to be able to stop and look at yourself and say, who do I want to be? How could I be a better father? How can I be a better husband? How can I be a better citizen? How can I be more useful where God has put me? As opposed to just feeling stuck in your faults. And that was just really impactful in my life.
That is. It's a very impactful statement, thought. Thank you. Thank you for sharing it. And I thank you for being here today and just like sharing with us your story. It's always so interesting to me to see how our lives, kind of take this unexpected path to where we land. But it's always encouraging to me to hear the things that are redemptive. And I love that Realm Makers has so many dimensions of redemptive story that you encourage your audiences with. And so thank you for that. Thank you for sharing your story with us. And we look forward to seeing you at FPEA. Thanks for listening to the Not by the Book podcast from the Florida Parent Educators Association. To learn more about homeschooling in Florida or to find resources to help you on this amazing journey, visit our website at FPEA.com. If you have any suggestions for future guests, contact me, Suzanne, at notbythebook@fpea.com. Thanks again for listening, and be inspired to live your life not by the book.